Good morning, Noonan. This is Jimmy Ellison. You're listening to Faith Works, where each week we interview leaders in our community who are demonstrating that faith does indeed work. And this morning, I'm thrilled to have my friend Jack Couch. Others know him as Papa Jack Couch, who he is a local singer-songwriter. He's got a great story, which he'll share with us today, and on the side, he pastors a church here in Noonan. So, Jack,
Yeah.
so glad to have you on the show today.
Happy to be here. I'm thrilled to be here.
Well, you are someone. When I first met you, and we'll talk a little about that. When I first met you, Jack, I thought to myself, now this is somebody I want on the show to come and share a little of his story. So let's talk. Just take us back to where Jack was born, where Jack grew up, and his faith story.
Well, we moved around a lot. My dad was with General Motors, but both my parents were from Meriwether County, so this part of the world has always felt like home, and we would visit grandparents here all through the years.
What part of
growing
Meriwether?
up. Luthersville.
Really?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
right at the top of, and
Absolutely.
of course we would come to Noonan, to come to the big city, and growing up, Noonan was a big deal. But I was actually born in Miami. We lived all over. We lived in Atlanta and Birmingham, but went to high school in Jacksonville. And then went to Georgia Tech. But in high school, there was an evangelical group called Young Life that reached out to teenagers
Sure.
just without any affiliation whatsoever, just sent a guy to hang out in our world and to make relationships, and then to have a short gospel presentation every week in a meeting, which was mostly like songs and fun and skits.
Sure.
And went to summer camp when I was 15 in Colorado with them.
With Young Life? Okay.
And gave my heart to Jesus. And have pretty well been stuck with him ever since.
That's an interesting theological phrase.
Well,
with Jesus.
and I started going to church after I came to faith, and so that's always been significant to me. Because of the fact that when I did go to church, my expectations were too high. And I expected everybody in church to really be all about Jesus, and they weren't. And so
Ryan, that sounded familiar.
but that's where the name is over the door, and our Young Life leader said, look, if faith is legitimate, it has got to be lived out in church. So I've been a part of churches ever since, and yet I've always had that perspective that and I was very fortunate that kind of the purity of the gospel is what got me.
Yeah.
And so ever since, I've had that, to be honest with you, I've had that sense of wariness about the institution.
Now, your family did not have a church home?
Kinda. They were very nominal Christians. When I was very young, they would drop me off, for kids' Sunday school, and I hated it. Yeah.
Did you continue to worship regularly when you were at Georgia Tech?
Oh yeah, I did, and was real involved in some campus programs, but I never, as funny, it was a struggle for me at Georgia Tech, and I never was able to do a lot in the way of extra ministry. But
did you graduate?
I did.
Well, that's a big deal.
But I barely did, and not as an engineer, as in industrial management.
Okay.
So I was in class with all the football players.
I understand.
And,
I understand how that works.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I did survive the place. Most of the ministry we did, and I was not a great representative, but was with Campus Crusade, which used to be, I think, huge.
Now it's called Crew.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I haven't kept up with all those changes, but we had. I was in a fraternity, which is also very different back then. But we had a Bible study in my room in the fraternity, and the Crusade people were good to help us kind of support that. And anyway, so finished at Tech, but I worked in playing music through those years in Atlanta in the late 60s. And
when did you pick up the guitar for the first time?
I had been playing since I was 13 and just picked it up, but it was when folk music was huge, and it was like on the radio, like folk songs.
Like real folk songs?
Yeah, like Bob Dylan, Peter, Paul, and Mary.
Jack, when were you at high school, Georgia Tech, and in college? What years?
I finished high school in 67.
67. So you were, that was right in the midst of,
tell me about it.
Make Love, Not War.
Tell me about it.
Did you have a little hippie in you?
You know, I did, and it was not as obvious because so many of the people that I knew who went kind of hippie were kind of working it, if you know what I'm saying. They were like, if you were in college at Tech, you were trying to do the best you could to keep afloat. And love and peace and all that was not something you had a lot of time for. But
you were studying at the varsity.
Yeah, but you know, the hippie invasion happened in those years, and that area of Peachtree Street between 10th and 14th was just,
it changed.
Oh, it was amazing. It was just hippies, bikers, Black Panthers, Hare Krishnas, I don't know who all. And they were like 5 deep on the sidewalk. And so my friends who would visit Atlanta, they wanted to do two things. They would want to go right up on Peachtree Street to see all the weirdness and all the hippies, and they would want to go to the Regency and ride up the glass elevator. And of course, we'd always get thrown out of there when you do that, but you'd usually get at least one ride.
Yeah, you always get one before they knock you out.
Yeah, and but anyway, I had played music in Jacksonville, and gave it up when folk music went out of style, because basically I couldn't afford electric equipment, a guitar and an amp. But happened to know Graham Parsons when I was still playing there. He was a couple years older. He was at Bowles School, and we lived in that part of town. And so had a great, background, but then gave it up. But after my freshman year in college, we happened to start hanging out at a bar, which incidentally, my life as a believer has partly been, and I understand how a lot of people don't agree with this, but a lot of my life has been lived out in the world, in bars and in fraternity houses and in situations where you don't think of the environment as Christian. But from the very beginning, when I came to faith, I had this idea that Christ came for abundant life in every area. And so I never defined it as being a professional minister. I believe that the job I would have would be, I'd be working for Jesus and in the world. And
through the workplace and through other areas.
Yeah, and to try to be excellent in terms of work, but also to try to be redemptive, to
Absolutely.
the people out in the world. And because a lot of the people I've known from the very beginning weren't ever going to a church. and that's how they found me. And so I've always been kind of sensitive to that. So after my first year in school in Jacksonville, we were hanging out in a bar, and there was a band there called The Second Coming. And we just fell in love with them, and they had two guys. It was, it was like five, but there were two guys. One was Dickie Betts, and one was Barry Oakley. And, of course, that fall they went on to move to Macon and form the Allman Brothers with Greg and Dwayne Allman and those guys. But anyway, in hearing them that summer, we got so charged up that a friend of mine taught me into dragging my guitar out and playing music down in St. Augustine, because there was still like a folk kind of a interest down there. There are a couple bars we could play in, and I still didn't have electric equipment, so I just still had my old guitar. But so I started playing again. That worked out. So when I went back to Atlanta that fall, started working around, and that was the time that they developed the original Underground. And so we found a bar that would let us, that would hire us to play. It was kind of on the back side. It was in the back alley of Underground. It was called P.J. Kenny's Saloon. It was not one of the big showplace bars, which were on the main drag. But anyway, so all through college, got to work. I had music when I could. I had to stop and keep myself alive in school, but started writing songs and just, fell in love with that, with music.
Sure.
And had hoped to be a songwriter, and had a good friend that happened to work for the production company that put on the Johnny Cash show, and so we used to go to Nashville every weekend and hang out with him and everybody that was on the Cash show, and they would film it on Sunday afternoon at the Ryman Auditorium.
Okay.
And so we would have the run of the place all weekend, and back then they had the Opry on Friday and Saturday nights, and so they had all the big stars there all weekend, so we would go hang out and stand around in the wings of the stage and talk to Dolly Parton and Tex Ritter and Earl Scruggs and all these people, and anyway, eventually got to pitch a couple songs to Johnny Cash, and he claimed to like them and had me send them to his publisher, and then nothing happened. And but
had the experience of hanging out with Johnny Cash. I mean, what an experience that is.
Well, it was.
To see things from the back of the stage.
Well, yeah, I was actually pitching the songs to the Statler Brothers, and if anybody remembers them, they always played with Cash I think every show we ever did.
Decca 51. You remember that song, Ron? Decca 51.
Yeah, they were great.
Oh yeah.
But I was actually playing the songs for them, and Cash walked in, so I can't claim to really hang out with Cash, but I can claim he did sit still. He heard the end of one song and asked for me to play another one, so I can say that, but we didn't go sit and visit after that,
That's okay.
He moved along, but yeah, it was very encouraging, obviously.
Well, for Johnny Cash to say, "Hey, play me another song," I'd put that at one of the top.
Yeah.
When it comes to songwriting, that's got to be one of your top experiences there.
Yeah.
So you finished Georgia Tech, and you went back to Florida at that point. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, I fell in love.
Women, Ryan, how many times have I told you the women can just take you down? Let me tell you. So.
Well, and she did, although in this case it was down to South Georgia, but she was a woman of faith. In fact, that's the first conversation we ever had was about the fact that we had actually both been in Young Life, and so we had a very similar experience of faith. And we knew a lot of people in common. She was from Atlanta, but she was at Florida State. and a couple years younger. Anyway, when I finished school, I had the choice. I had just met her, and we had just gotten I had just gotten serious. She was not, but I had to either try and go to Nashville or take a little bit of a detour. I had a job offer in South Georgia in Camilla, but it was only 1 hour from Tallahassee. So I could go chase Ann if I deferred my songwriting dreams, and that's what I did, and did manage to catch her, and had a wonderful life together, had a great romance for a lot of years. But I never got back to Nashville.
Yeah.
And I would not trade the years with her for anything. We had 3 sons. We had a blessed life together. But because both of us had come to faith as teenagers, both of us were committed to youth ministry above all else. So wherever we were, we did youth ministry, and of course 3 churches. I was in South Georgia we moved back to Atlanta, then we moved to Jacksonville. We got married right before we went back to Atlanta. Was in Jacksonville a few years, but then went to Waycross, Georgia, and got stuck there for 32 years.
Stuck in Waycross. There's probably a song about that.
You know, I need to be able to, and I haven't got a song about Waycross yet, although there's no shortage of those in other connections, but yeah, I need to write something. But
what kind of work were you doing?
I was in the car business. I was actually a car salesman for a number of years.
With a Georgia Tech degree.
Yeah, and it really is a long story, and I really did always believe that I was being led in the career world by the Lord into doing whatever I was doing.
Yeah.
And it's a long story. I only went into that because I thought we would end up with our own dealership, because my dad thought he would buy a dealership, but he never did. And so I was there in the car business, which I'd only gotten into to learn. But did okay, and it was hard because before the Lord, I needed to be an honest and forthright and caring car salesman, and that's
probably in turn turned out to be a good thing because people trusted you.
You would think. Although people are so conditioned to what they get in the world and from salesmen and from the hustle, and that they really kind of didn't understand how to receive. They kind of didn't trust me, and I understood that, you know. But I still tried to do what was right from my end, you know, and there are people who want to be lied to, and they're a little disappointed when you don't. And so that was kind of hard.
That's interesting. That's in that business, I would imagine they're ready for the going back and forth.
But I got promoted to run a dealership in Waycross, and then after 9 months I got fired, just because the guy thought I was a little too. Be honest with you, he thought I was a little too faithful. I spent too much time caring about people who had already bought a car, who were having service problems, and he just thought I spent too much time on things other than hustling out the next car.
Yeah.
We were doing fine, you know.
So you did that, and so where does you're serving a local church here in Lovejoy Memorial, just great church, involved in the community. Just I love, I know a lot about that church, history of it, and just love it. Love its location, love its history in the town. So you're there now. When did pastoring come on the scene? When did you go from being only vocation as
Right.
a bivocational. When did that
Right.
happen? You didn't go to seminary, right?
No, did not. Although I'm taking courses now, as you know, you have to,
Yeah.
at Candler, I love them. I enjoy
I'm sure
it,
you do.
although it's hard. But no, we spent our lives working in churches as lay people. We would do, we would be, the church we were in a Methodist church in Waycross for 27 years. One reason we went there to start with is because they hired a full-time youth pastor. They had
Yeah.
a good ministry going. We were always the big support system, and then when we'd be between pastors, we'd always fill in, but we'd lead trips and do all kind of stuff. And I taught Bible studies and Sunday schools, and we did Fellowship of Christian Athletes. I mean, we really spent a lot of...
Life. Was there a Young Life chapter down there?
No, because Waycross was never big enough to support an official Young Life program, because you need a board and you need to raise funds to hire a full-time guy or person. We never had that. But it was still always reaching out to teenagers and young people. Anyway, when I got asked several times to be, officially part of ministry, and to be honest with you, the Lord just always said no. And we were also asked several times to start our own churches when people would be all frustrated with the institution.
Yeah.
Because we were kind of at war with the old people. The old people wanted the young people to be just like them. And
That's kind of how I am right now, Ryan.
I know.
I want all the youngsters to be like me.
I know. You want them to dress up, sit up straight, and come to church every time it opens. And anyway, we had a bunch of young people in town that didn't go to our church, but they would come to the youth meetings and they would hear about Jesus, and so we thought that was okay, but a lot of people didn't. But anyway, so never in all those years did we respond to any kind of official invitation to be part of the ministry, but only about 4 years ago now, when I had been, we moved to this area in 2009, Meriwether County in Greenville. And I was part of the Methodist Church there. And the pastor sat me down about 4 years ago, so a woman named Jan Oglesby, and said, I really think you should consider being an actual pastor. At the time, I was teaching Bible study there on Wednesday nights, and that was going really well, and doing a praise service on Sunday nights where I would play and we'd sing, And she said, she really felt a leading to ask me to consider that. And when she did, it was one of those times when a light just went on.
Yeah.
And the process went very quickly. She was really surprised at how, and it just happened, we hit the process right in terms of the schedule and the calendar. And so within that was late in 2016, I guess, and in June of 2017, I had a church. Actually, I had two churches down in Harris County, Hopewell and Whitesville. United, but went through the process. You go through a licensing school.
Yeah.
You go through a mentoring process. You have a psychological evaluation. You have a credit check. You have a criminal background check. And so, amazingly enough, I got through all of that. Yeah,
I'm surprised.
What are the odds?
Went well for you.
I know. I had my doubts, and was ready just to be kind of booted at any point. But no, it actually they thought I might be qualified.
That's wonderful. That's great. So you got into pastoring at that point, and tell me, you've got your three sons.
Right.
Are they in Atlanta? Where are they?
They're all spread out. They're in their 40s already, but my oldest has been in California since he graduated from Georgia. He managed to find the only young woman there from California. And for some reason, they thought it would be cooler to move to San Francisco than South Georgia. And we kind of understood. So they've been out there ever since, and they're now in Southern California. My middle son is a teacher and coach and has basically had his career all around the Atlanta area. He's now in Athens at Athens Academy. He also went to
Great
Georgia.
School.
And my youngest...
Number one, I think they have the number one, do they have the number one quarterback? Athens?
That is, no, that is Prince.
Prince has it over there. I knew one of the schools over there had it.
Yeah, in fact, that kid has already, I think, made national headlines by signing at Georgia, and he still has his senior year yet to play.
Yeah. Anyway, go ahead, I interrupted you.
No,
So the third son...
He went to Tech, and he's in industrial design, and he has lived mostly in D.C. and then went to graduate school in Providence and lived in Boston. Wow. Now he's in Knoxville.
Wow, that's
so
great.
He's not that far away.
Well, Jack, when we get back, I want to ask you about a time that you went through a difficult season and your faith carried you. Jesus walked with you and carried you through that season. And then I want us to talk about a song, and then we're going to, I think, Ryan, we're going to play a song, right, Ryan? Mm-hmm. So we're going to play one of your songs, but I want you to tee it up before we play it. So that's something we want to do on the back end of the show. Friends, you're listening to Faith Works. We will be right back.
You've been around long enough to know good stuff when you hear it. That's why you're here now. Classic Hits, WQEE 99.1 FM, The Key.
Join us here, live from Noonan, Georgia, as we present the Health, Happiness, and Harmony Hour, every Wednesday from 10 to 11. I'm your host, Dr. Lewis Boynton. Please join us each week as we have new guests and talk about topics related to the psychological world. We're hoping that you will find interesting and helpful topics that will help you have more health, happiness, and harmony in your life. Join us every Wednesday from 10 to 11 at 99.1 WQEE Rock and Roll Radio.
Tune in the second and fourth Thursday each month for Know Your Rights. I'm your host, Charles Cobble, and we will discuss your rights and have plenty of information on what those rights are. Every second and fourth Thursday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. on WQEE 99.1 FM.
Ever dreamed of being a radio DJ or hosting your own show? Now here's your chance. WQEE 99 Rock the Key is giving you an opportunity to host your own show. If you'd like to get your advertising message across the thousands of listeners throughout the area, here's your chance. Hosting your own show is the way to do it. Perfect for attorneys, realtors, churches, sports talk shows, and more. Contact 678-673-6318 for further information. Host your own show.
The biggest schools.
Touchdown, Penn State, Alabama, Oklahoma, Ohio State will win.
The biggest games.
Kick is good. The Longhorns lead. Intercepted at the goal line. The Dogs have picked it up.
Reliving the weekend on the gridiron. It's the College Football Rewind.
Throws over the middle. Pass broken up. And the Huskies are going to win. The Gators get a pick six.
Download on Sunday mornings on Apple Podcasts.
This place, it's an insane asylum.
Search College Sports now.
Hey, I'm Jimmy Ellis, and I'm the pastor here at Noonan City Church. I want to thank you. You'll find as you walk through that we focus on three areas primarily. One is worship, small groups, and local missions.
And our purpose is transforming lives for Jesus' sake, helping individuals experience that transformation. And we use these three areas, worship, small groups, and local missions, to help individuals experience that. So you'll get a sense of who Noonan City Church is, and I hope that you'll come and worship with us soon. Take care, and God bless.
Around long enough to remember getting up to turn the channels on the TV? That's classic. Classic Hits. WQEE 99.1 FM, The Key.
Welcome back to Faith Works. This is Jimmy Ellison. We are talking to Jack Couch, or Papa Jack, as his I guess that's your stage name.
I guess, yeah.
And so, Jack, I want to on the back end of today's show, I want you to share a little of a time that the Lord just carried you. A time, one of the questions we ask each week is, how has faith carried you? How have you shown that faith has worked in your own life during a difficult season?
Yeah, and again, we did. We viewed ourselves as belonging absolutely to Jesus and everything we did, and we struggled. Most of our struggles were in career and in finances.
You talking about your family now?
Yeah.
Yep.
And we were blessed with our marriage. We stayed in love for 37 years. Our sons grew up to be faithful and to be did well in school, did well in sports. We were very proud of them and very blessed in things we did. But I never did well in career, and it was always a struggle, and I felt like the Lord was really using that, though, to, although I did not appreciate it, the Lord was really using that to kind of build who I was in terms of character, in terms of faith, in terms of maturity as a believer. So we finally moved up here in 2009 and lived in Greenville, and it was a great start. Ann was a high school math teacher, and she was really gifted, and she was at Manchester High School, and they loved her, and it was working out great. But 2 months after we moved here, we were coming home from the grocery store on the LaGrange Highway. It had been a week when there was just a horrendous amount of rain, and on Saturday at about noon, we were driving back to Greenville on the highway, and I hit a huge wet spot in the highway and hydroplaned and started spinning around in the road and hit another car head on. And when I came to, I realized that Ann was gone. She had been killed instantly. And responders came, and they had to drag me away pretty quickly. I was needed to be taken to the ER. And so in that half second, life as I knew it ended. And the one thing that I never expected to lose in this world was my relationship with her. We had always believed that Jesus was alive right between us. And, we had our struggles, again, in the world, with things being unfair or things being hard. And the one thing I never expected, though, to lose was her. And
how long had you been married, Jack?
37 years. And I was, I didn't even have enough sense of aliveness after that. I was just in shock. Looking back, probably for most of a year, maybe several, I'm not sure, but I didn't care about living. I didn't even care about dying. I was just so devastated by just that whole loss and that whole just upside down world that I just went through motions of trying to stay alive. I had to keep working. I had to keep, moving forward. Although everything, again, was new. We didn't have a support system in this area. Had not even been real seriously involved in a church yet. I'd actually started going. The last thing we did together was go to a Presbyterian church here in Noonan, which I stayed with for about 8 years. It's called Christ Presbyterian Church. Still going strong, but the Lord just literally dragged me along. I didn't understand what had happened, still don't. Didn't like what had happened, was not able to say that I saw God's purpose in it. But
Well, I want to interject there, if you don't mind. Because we're like-minded in being Wesleyan,
yeah,
we don't believe everything that happens is from God. We don't believe that you go out. I mean, we believe we live in a world with free will, free choice, and you can choose. There because of sin, because of this imperfect world. There's pain, there's disease, there's when sin entered the world in Genesis 3, things went downhill. Things are not perfect. We don't live in perfect harmony, and thus we live in a world where there are accidents, where there are things that happen. And so I want to not that this is not the purpose of the show. I don't do this long, but I want to encourage you to not see this as something that God did. It's certainly something God allows.
well, and I never said I think it's something God did, but in God's sovereignty and in His greatness, we cannot believe in His ability to do good things without believing that He is in control of all things. Even though and there's plenty of scriptural evidence for the fact that He sometimes allows, number one, just difficulty and things that we consider tragedy, but from His perspective, He sees the outcome. And so things that we consider terribly painful, He is not quite so worried about because of the fact that He knows what good it does.
And Paul spoke to He can use all things.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so, and it was just a personal loss that on a feeling level. But I knew even then that God is good. And even if I don't understand or feel how He's good in every single instance, He's still good.
Yeah.
And that's why they call it faith. If we had an absolute guarantee and an absolute payoff every time we made any kind of move, then it wouldn't be faith. It would just be, just quid pro quo. I do this, I get that back,
Man, thank you for sharing that, Jack. I didn't know that part of your story. We met at the Nest, which is the Noonan Emergency Shelter Team, which is hosted at Noonan City Church. Jack, I'm assuming you saw something online or heard about it, But you called us, right? Isn't that how that worked?
My friend Danny Tomlinson,
Yeah,
who
love
is
Danny.
A resident of Noonan and a member of First Methodist,
Yeah.
he and I went through licensing school together, and
Okay.
we talk every Sunday morning, and we pray together on the phone. So we're good friends, and he is the one who knew about the program. And he called me and asked if I would be interested because he was interested in doing something with it. And going way, way back, I've had a lot of involvement with urban ministry, with ministry to poor people and oppressed people. And so I have come to believe that's a major part of our heart as believers. And so he said, and also in these last 10 years, I've been very conscious of wanting to spend every moment usefully, if I can. And so he brought it up. I said, sure. If you want to do it, I'll do it with you.
So for those who may not know, one of the shifts for the Nest is overnight. Danny and Jack, if the weather in Noonan ever drops or is scheduled to drop below 32 degrees, and it hits on a Tuesday evening when it's going to drop, Jack and Danny, they are our go-to team that covers the overnight shift, which means they show up around 10 p.m. and I come to relieve them at about 6:30 to 7 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
They've been up all night.
And we don't look too good either.
They don't look good.
You'll be the first to agree.
I'll be a witness to that. No, y'all, you look rough, to be honest with you. But I think anyone who stays up all night, they're not at their best. But I just appreciate your, I love the fact that you see this as part of your calling, and I love it that you and Danny have that relationship that led to you all serving the marginalized in our own community. Jeff, we've got about 7 to 8 minutes left, and so I want us to tee up. I mean, you're a singer-songwriter so much. I want to encourage. You're going to see if you go to my Facebook, you're going to see all of Jack's contact information and where you can find his music. But I do want us to end the show by you sharing a little of a song that you've written called "The Witness Tree." And tell us a little about the Witness Tree and that song, and then we're going to wrap up. Ron's going to play that for us as we wrap up the show today. So tell us a little about the Witness Tree, how that song came about.
And to give a little really brief perspective, I had given up music when we moved here. The first 4 or 5 years after our wreck, I wasn't really involved, and yet music kind of came back by itself. I started getting asked to play more and more around Meriwether County, and I finally, that happened enough, I finally tried seeing if I could play on stage, if I could cut it again and playing on stages. So I went and started playing open mics at Eddie's Attic only about 3 or 4 years ago, and the crazy thing is my experiences as a performer in Atlanta started growing at exactly the same time my experience as a pastor developed. And basically, the experience as a pastor financed my ability to hang out in Atlanta and play music. And so that developed kind of a momentum of its own. And so we now have 2 albums out. I've played a bunch of shows around, have played at the Alamo here last October.
Really?
Yeah.
And you just got back from playing in New Orleans?
Yep.
That
was
a
at
big...
Folk Alliance International, and so got to take a mission trip to Belgium to play music. So anyway, that has all happened along with the pastor. So this song is called Witness Tree, and it's the title song of our second record, which is on all the platforms, and it's about the fact that we still have questions. I believe that God honors those questions.
When did you write this song, Jack?
About 2 years ago.
Okay, so this is after the
Oh, yeah.
tragic accident.
Yeah, I've been able to write songs again, which I'm really thankful to find
Yeah,
out.
that's great. Well, we want to tee this song up, and Ron's about to play it, and I hope you enjoy it.
Can you meet me at the witness tree? Can you bring your truth and raise it over me? Can the veil be lifted so that we can see all the wonder and the glory that we were meant to be? All the years we kept believing, all the days when the world kept passing by, unshed tears, unspoken grieving, never knowing when, never seeing how, never understanding why. Can you meet me at the witness tree? Can you bring your truth and pour it over me? Can the clouds be parted so that we can see all the wonder and the glory that we were meant to be? In the strain of never ending, in the fear of never meant to be, with all we ever had depending on a quiet hope in a still small voice with a never-ending plea. So can you meet me at the witness tree? Can you bring your truth and breathe it into me? Can the sky be open so that we can see all the wonder and the glory that we were meant to be? That we were meant to be.
Man, Jack, I love that. Tell me, we've got about 2 minutes. Tell me really quickly, you shared the little about the story of the tree.
Well, what I need to say probably worse, though, is that that song is typical in that it is about faith, and
Yeah.
it's about following the Lord, and yet it doesn't overtly mention that. I do songs, and I do them in bars that are gospel songs that are full out songs about Jesus, but everything we do is about life and the way that Christ came to redeem it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even always say why, but it's all those songs are about what Jesus does for us as humans
Yeah.
and what he allows us to develop in terms of abundant life. And so that's what I write about.
Good stuff. Jack, it's been such a pleasure having you today. I mean, it's been so good. I feel like we can get you back on another. We could probably do a whole show on maybe feature probably 4 or 5 of your songs.
Sure.
kind of share a little bit. Well, Ron, that sounds like a good show, doesn't it, Ron? Mm-hmm. And so let's think about doing that in the next several months. You coming back and doing several back-to-back songs to share the story.
Well, and I do want to say quickly, I value what you and your church are doing as well. Your ministry to the homeless, the fact that you threw it open when a lot of churches would not.
Right.
I have great respect for you and your ministry and your church, and so I am happy to be involved with y'all.
Well, we're grateful to have you. Ron is in our church. It's fun. We are trying to be obedient to the Spirit.
Yeah.
That's what that's our goal.
And I love my church too, by the way. And but it's a different. Our people have come through a different set of circumstances.
Well, your church provides food, and they provide a pastor who stays overnight, so they're in. And
they have been very supportive of when. Probably was not very easy for them to do that.
Absolutely.
So, yes.
Friends, what a great show. Thank you, Jack, again. Ryan, thank you for producing, making this happen week in and week out. And friends, thank you for tuning in. We will be back next week with another interview with a faith leader demonstrating that faith does indeed work. Have a great week.